Australian citizen journalist Cheng Lei has been formally arrested in China over suspicion of supplying state secrets overseas illegally. Cheng Lei worked for Chinese state television's international channel, the CGTN, and has a profile anchor. She hosted a business show on the English channel. She was initially detained in August last year. According to the Australian Foreign Minister, she was on the 5th of February after 6 months of detention. Payne said the Australian government raised strong concerns about detention at senior levels. Payne also said officials had visited Cheng 6 times during her detention, most recently being at the end of January.
Ms. Cheng has been detained in China since August of 2020. We have consistently raised our strong concerns about detention regularly at the most senior levels. We have made a number of consular visits to her as part of our bilateral consular agreement. The most recent of those was on the 27th of January, and we continue to seek assurances of her being treated appropriately, humanely, in accordance with international standards, and that will continue to be the case.
Tensions between Australia and China have been high since last year after Canberra called for an international investigation into the source of the coronavirus pandemic that first emerged in the city of Wuhan in China. Beijing responded to that trade reprisal against Australian goods. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived in court to respond to corruption charges leveled against him. This trial comes just 6 weeks before Netanyahu faces re-election. There are currently 3 cases against the 71-year-old Prime Minister, who is the first Israeli premier to be indicted in office. In fact, these are live shots we're getting you from Jerusalem in Israel, and we just told you Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has arrived in court where he will be answering corruption charges that have been leveled against him. Netanyahu has been charged with allegations that he accepted improper gifts and sought to trade regulatory favor with media moguls in exchange for positive coverage. Netanyahu has denied all these allegations, calling the charges fabricated and claimed to be the victim of a witch hunt. Now, today's session marks the beginning of the trial proper, with subsequent hearings on focus on testimony and evidence. The trial schedule may force Netanyahu to appear in court multiple times this week as he campaigns ahead of Israel's 4th election in less than 2 years, to be held in March. Meanwhile, the corruption case has had a polarizing impact on Israelis. Thousands of demonstrators gather weekly outside Netanyahu's official residence and across Israel under the banner of Crime Minister, demanding that Netanyahu quit. Now, one such group of protesters call themselves the Pink Front, and members say they represent love, optimism and female leadership. Netanyahu has called the protesters anarchists, accusing them of failing to take COVID precautions and seeking to topple a democratically elected leader. Now, remember, Netanyahu is Israel's longest-serving prime minister, and he will have to enter his plea to charges of bribery, fraud and a breach of trust. Now, the case involves secret recordings, media moguls, gifts of cigars and champagne, and betrayal by some of his aides. The 3 corruption cases all have the makings of a political thriller. Netanyahu has managed to stay in office throughout the investigations and 3 election campaigns. And remember, a 4th election is due on the 23rd of March, and Netanyahu will have to make several appearances in court even as the proceedings continue, all the time while he is also focusing his attention on campaigning ahead of the March election. Now, Netanyahu has denied all wrongdoing, and a trial is likely to take years. Now, Netanyahu is fighting to remain Prime Minister, and he is eyeing many more years in office. Now, if he wins, he could try to secure parliamentary immunity or pass laws to exempt a serving Prime Minister from standing trial. The trial is all set to begin and Netanyahu is in court. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.